Welcome into the Wellness Lab, the podcast that teaches you how to create your own wellness equation. Today we have a great guest. He is one of my all-time favorite authors. His name is Dan Millman, the author of the Peaceful Warrior series. I read Dan's books over 20 years ago in my early mid-20s, and these are the first books that woke me up to spirituality and life having more depth and more meaning. I interview Dan, and we go deep into self-love, self-worth, understanding realities, how to be happy, how to find joy, how to live a life filled with purpose and presence. We talk a lot about mastery and really learning how to be the master of your own life through practices, and really understanding that all the self-work we do is about getting better at our lives and enjoying our lives more. It's such an enlightening and enlivening conversation, and one I've been looking forward to for many years. So dive in, enjoy, and get ready for a great conversation with a great guest, Dan Millman. All right, welcome into the Wellness Lab, the podcast that teaches you how to create your own wellness equation. Today we have one of my authors / heroes, Dan Millman, on the show. Dan, welcome to the show. It is an absolute honor to have you with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Nick. It's really a pleasure to have a chance to connect with you on a topic that is relevant to us all. And to start with a grounding exercise, what I normally do when I give a talk, whether it's a few people or thousands, is I just open my heart before I open my mouth. And I take one deep breath. And I'm ready. That's pretty much it. It doesn't take long, very efficient, and ready to roll.
It's simple, efficient, and easy. Well, Dan, let's jump in. I'd love to give the listeners who maybe don't have as much context around your work, before your teachings, before all the books you've written, and traveling and teaching. Who were you that led you to, becoming a teacher and someone who has really followed a very different path than most?
Well, there's that saying, we can only understand life looking back, but we have to live it forwards. And so looking back, I guess I have some clarity in the rearview mirror, so to speak. When I was a young man, I was very much into, like many of your listeners perhaps, self-improvement. I did speed reading courses and took memory courses and learned sleight of hand magic and acrobatics and martial arts, ventriloquism, you name it, I was into it. Getting a broad exposure to many different practices. And that taught me something about the process of learning how to learn. But after all that self-improvement, I realized no matter how much I improved myself, only one person benefited. But then the idea struck me that if I could somehow find a way to help improve the lives of other people, that made my life more meaningful. And I had no clue as to how I might do that. I was just a young guy, and I'd never even thought about writing a book. But that just unfolded over time. There was maybe a seed within me wanting to influence people in a positive way. And I found my way, which I call The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, title of my best known book, which they adapted to film, in 2006 with Nick Nolte, of all people. But
maybe we can dive into why you chose Nick. That's an interesting pick. But
well, I didn't choose him. He was just available at the time, and great guy, very fun actor. The thing is, the way I came up with the idea of a peaceful warrior, I was teaching a course. I was an assistant professor at Oberlin College in Ohio, teaching a course in some basic martial arts skills in Aikido and Tai Chi. And I was going to call it, for the school catalog, Way of the Warrior, which made a certain sense, Path of the Warrior, But then I said, I thought, these are internal arts. They're not really aggressive arts. They're more receptive. And then in a light bulb moment, it was like, hey, why don't I call it The Way of the Peaceful Warrior? peaceful modifying warrior. And that was the context. So when I wrote a book many years later, I didn't know what to call it. It was very holistic. It was about a search, a journey. And that's when I thought of the idea. How about Way of the Peaceful Warrior? It wasn't until later that I began recognizing in you, in your listeners, and everybody, pretty much, that we're all peaceful warriors in training in the school of life. And what I mean by that is every one of us is probably seeking to live with a more peaceful heart, a sense of equanimity and serenity even in the midst of the chaos of everyday life. But at the same time, we recognize that there are times we need a warrior's spirit. And by that, I don't mean just about fighting, except maybe with the demons, the inner demons of self-doubt, insecurity, fear of one kind or another. But I mean just rolling up our sleeves, marching into life and doing what we need to do day by day, facing difficulties, challenges, and wellness. I mean, workouts in the gym or going for a run. These are all forms of voluntary adversity. Life is easier if we don't do them. But we choose these things because intuitively, I think we know that every adversity we've ever faced, every difficulty has made us a little wiser and a little stronger. I remind people sometimes that digging out of a deep, dark hole can give us the strength to climb mountains. So that's kind of a premise. But before we get into, the hows and the details and my approach to fitness and wellness, I need to say that a fundamental tenet of this approach to living, I call the Peaceful Warrior's Way, expressed in 18 books now, is that there is no best book, no best teacher, no best religion, philosophy, path, diet, or system of exercise. There's only the best for each of us at a given time of our life. Life's an experiment. We have to respect our own process and find out what works for us. So with that, I guess I've provided a kind of context foundation.
I mean, I love what you were just alluding to, that, but my teachers would say you have to find the breath that's right for you. And the breath becomes the metaphor of the teacher, the practice, the marriage, the job. And there's not a lot of, I just find it refreshing you're saying that. There's not a lot of people out there in the mainstream that are willing to say, my way may not be the right way. That tends to be what sells books. That tends to be what sells courses of, I have the system, I have the way. And I'm just reminded of something in the Way of the Peaceful Warrior where Socrates says to you something like, you need to stay almost not normal, but you need to stay like a normal person in order to be of service, right? I believe was the line. And that really was rung true what you just said there of maybe your job is to present ways that people could try out and then they need to see if it works for them. Is that kind of how we start on these paths of self-exploration and growth?
Sure. Today, many of us tend to compare ourselves to other people. Especially many young people are suffering a lot because they see their friends who apparently are having more fun than them, better looking than them, and all that on social media feeds. But when I was teaching basic gymnastics, I noticed that some people learned, say, a somersault quicker and easier than other people. But I also noticed that those who took longer to learn it often learned it better than those who learned it faster. So each of us needs to respect our own way of living, our own way of learning, and respect our body and what works for it. I'm going to be turning 80 years old in a couple of months. And I have to adapt. Older people need more exercise than younger people. They need to spend a lot of their day active, but different kinds of exercises than the intensity of a 20-year-old. And I'm quite active in my own life. So is my wife.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you don't look a day over 60. I mean, it's just, the longer I've been in wellness, the more I watch and pay attention to people. And I notice, here's someone that looks 20 years younger. What are they doing? here's someone that looks 20 years older. What are they doing? I usually find it happens. It's in between it's in the mind is what I've noticed. It seems like a positive mindset and an attitude are what set us up for success and longevity.
Well, that there certainly is truth in that. I mean, genetics plays a role, but also lifestyle. We can turn on or off genes, that are good genes, bad genes, whatever. So yes, lifestyle is quite important. I once worked out with Jack LaLanne. Do you remember that old fitness guru?
Yeah, didn't he used to pull a boat for every year old he was? By the end he was swimming with like 80 boats or something, I believe was the legend.
On his 70th birthday, he swam 1 mile towing 70 rowboats, with people in them. And he was towing the boats in his teeth, with a rope in his teeth, because his arms and legs were shackled. And this is in Wikipedia. You can look it up under Jack LaLanne in Wikipedia. And Jack wanted to show what was possible. And he was an extraordinary human being. He was a very, very sickly teenager. Had a great story. He came across this fellow named Paul Bragg, who was like a enthusiastic health salesman of wellness and so on. He inspired me too when I was a young guy at Stanford.
Yeah, same.
Coaching. The Miracle of Fasting, he wrote. It wasn't that scientific, but it really inspired people. And so he became Jack's role model and teacher. And anyway, the reason I mentioned Jack LaLanne is I had a chance to work out with him at Santa Monica Beach. We were doing handstand push-ups many years ago. I was like late teens. And Jack used to say, I hate to exercise, but I love the results. And many people assume, all these exercise nuts, they just love to exercise. And maybe some do. But frankly, it's a challenge for me. And it always has been. I've always stretched myself, but I do enjoy the results of the exercise. And if you can enjoy the process, that's even better.
Yeah, so well said. Yeah, your book and Paul Bragg's book are the ones that first got me to start fasting in my early 20s too, by the way. And it's so cool. What do you do at this point in your life for daily exercise and practice? What does that kind of look like in general?
Whoa. I get up early, and my wife and I both get up early, and we do maybe 45 minutes of calisthenics, core work, push-ups, a lot of various stretches. And that's just the beginning of our day. And then I'll go to the Y go to the weight room twice a week, and then I do swim some laps. We bicycled around Brooklyn's Prospect Park this morning a couple times. And so I bike twice a week. I go for a long walk, doing a certain breathing exercise. After reading James Nestor's book, Breath, that inspired me to do various breathing practices. I stay active. I also work I created a workout called the Peaceful Warrior Workout about 1985, I believe it was. And I've done it every day since then. Every day.
What does that entail? I think I've seen some of it, but can you describe what that looks like?
Yeah, well, it's based on the principle, a little of something is better than a lot of nothing. It's a 4-minute workout. And many people who are really into fitness will go, 4 minutes, what is that, and there are many, many type of short exercise systems, as you well know. The Tibetan rites, that's a great story behind that. And the Canadian exercises, and New York Times puts out these shorter workouts. But I've done this based on my background, starting out as a little kid in dance, modern dance. I learned muscular control. And then various martial arts, karate, judo, aikido, tai chi, and so on. And I learned something called psychocalisthenics in a school called the Eureka School many, many years ago in the mid-'70s. So I combined all these movements, and there's a longer story, but I won't tell it now. I just said, okay, deliver, what is a brief workout someone could do. And I wrote up 16 different exercises, and I do just 2 of each, but it involves movement, breathing, and gets every body part. And that is, I work into my normal morning calisthenics. So I still do that workout, but I do more as I've gotten older. A lot of it looks like physical therapy exercises. But nothing hurts when I wake up in the morning. Nothing hurts. So far, so good. And yes, staying active. I mean, basically, when people come to me for a consultation, they go, Dan, I've got a spiritual problem. I have an emotional issue. I still ask them 3 questions. Are you doing regular, moderate exercise almost every day? Are you eating a balanced diet for you? And are you getting enough rest? That's the holy trinity of health, with all the gourmet ideas around how much water you should drink or shouldn't, supplements or not, all these other questions and subtleties about health and wellness. It comes down to those 3 things. That's the foundation. And notice I didn't say a vegan, vegetarian, plant-based, paleo, keto, whatever, a Mediterranean. I just find out a way to eat a little more of what's nutritious, a little less of what's not. Don't make it try to be a perfect diet. So, for example, you mentioned fasting. I used to fast 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, up to 12 days, sometimes a little more. But these days, I just do 1, maybe 20-hour fast a week where I don't eat until later in the afternoon. And that gives my digestive system a rest. That works for me at my age right now. So I don't do extended fasts anymore. I just don't feel the need for it.
Yeah. I love when you were alluding to it with fitness was, you said something's better than nothing in essence. And then you put that into, in essence, like self-growth and self-work and, even awakening. And it's what I find with the students that I work with and the gyms I own, it's people get so hard on themselves that they don't do anything. And they go, what about fasting? What about diet? What about peptides? What about hormones? And I'm like, you're not even exercising. Let's start there. Let's exercise. Then let's eat well. And then if that doesn't work, okay, then we can explore something else. But it sounds like you're saying the big 3 levers: exercise, movement, and then the third was rest, right?
Well, exercise and balanced diet, whatever that is for each individual. And then, then enough rest. And there's more and more books. Why We Sleep. That's an excellent book that emphasizes how important it is to go to bed at a regular time. I mean, not perfectly every night, but for the most part, over time, going to bed at a regular time, getting up at a regular time, and getting sufficient rest rather than looking at your phone late into the night and then having to get up early to go to work, whatnot. So getting enough rest, usually 7 to 9 hours for most people, is sufficient. And some people think they can get away with less sleep. Maybe they can when they're young, but there are cognitive and physical prices or costs of that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And you're making it so simple and digestible, of eat better more often than not, move more often than not, and sleep better than more often than not. You don't have to get it perfect.
Right.
That's so helpful. Something I've noticed on my own growth is I've put the physical practices on a lower pedestal than the spiritual practices. And getting myself caught in, my meditation practice is more important than my exercise practice or even working with clients. I'd rather work with someone on their mental work than their physical work. Any insights for a teacher like myself or someone else who may be doing something similar? I feel like you've got some good insights on the balance of those modalities.
Well, thanks for asking, Nick. And yes, it's a bit controversial, but let me just express this. If there were a terrible storm outside, wherever your listeners are right now, I would ask them, let's say there was a lot of destruction in the storm. Would it be your fault? Would it be my fault or responsibility, or would it? The answer would be no, right? Because we can't control the weather. If we could control the weather, then we would have some responsibility for it. So maybe we could agree that we are more responsible for what we have more control over and less responsible for what we have less control over. So what I'm getting at here is that I'm going to suggest, nobody has to believe it because I'm saying it, but I'm going to suggest, make the observation that we have very little control over what emotions are passing through us in any given moment. Emotions are like, they pass like the weather. Sometimes it's cloudy, sometimes it's stormy, sometimes it's calm or sunny. But emotions come and go, and we can't will ourselves to feel differently from the way we do in any given moment. But it will pass anyway, just like the weather. I'm also suggesting we have very little or no control over what thoughts appear in our awareness. Now, we can use our minds to focus, meditate, concentrate, solve problems, write poetry, and so on. But the discursive thoughts that just pop into our head, sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative. But we have very little control over those thoughts. I don't have a spam filter in my head. I don't know if you do, but
sure don't.
No, they just, and all these ideas that they say, we'll teach you to think positively. Well, maybe we can set up a filter through which we look at the world and a more positive, more rosy glasses than dark glasses. And yeah, sure, there are ways to do that, cognitive behavior therapy and so on. But as far as being responsible or having control over the thoughts that just appear in our field of awareness, thoughts happen to us. We don't get up in the morning saying, I think I'll think this thought next. They just occur. They happen to us. So I am suggesting that because we have very little control over the thoughts that arise, what we're thinking in any given instant or moment, or the feelings that pass through us, I'm suggesting that neither you nor I nor any of your listeners have any responsibility for any thought or feeling that's ever passed through them. Now, I hope that's kind of lifts a burden. But we are responsible for one thing. If I were to ask you to reach up and touch the tip of your nose, if you're willing to do that right now, yeah, you intended it. You said, okay, I'll go along with that. Your hand started moving and it touched the tip of your nose. We do have control over how we move our body, how we move our arms and legs, including our mouth. That's movement. So we are responsible for what we do. And one of the problems with young teenagers, their minds get very busy with dilemmas of every kind, and they feel too responsible for the wild and crazy thoughts they're having and urges and ideas. And they feel too responsible for the feelings they have and not responsible enough for what they actually do. And that's true for most adults. Well, I lashed out at that person because I was angry, as if that's an explanation. But whatever we're feeling, whatever we're thinking, whether we're motivated or not, life will unfold, and our lives have been shaped by what we've done over time. This can radically simplify our life rather than all the complications of how do I change my feelings and then think more positively so I can finally go to the gym or do a workout. No, it's about just do it. It really means something. It's not about whether you're feeling motivated. I'm not always motivated to do what I do, but I get up. I brush my teeth, and I get up and I do my workout. And so I'm letting people off the hook as far as emotions and thoughts go. But so mindset, I'm not sure. Some of us have a more positive mindset or we're hardwired to just get stuff done. I'm like a constructive compulsive. That's how I'm wired. But it really is the major question we can ask ourselves is, what do I need to do right now? And then start. It's like dream big, but start small and then connect the dots. And we can't control the outcomes in our life. We can't control whether we sink a putt every time, make a basket, find love or success, but we can control our efforts. And by making a good effort over time, we vastly increase the odds of reaching or going toward our goals than not making the effort. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot, and I don't know how much it's possible to absorb from what I just said, but focus on what we need doing in line with our goals.
Yeah. It sounds like you're alluding to the power of discipline also, rather than motivation. Yeah, I don't want to get up and meditate today, but I did because it's something that's important. I know it makes me feel better and I've set an intention. So I guess what you're saying is I don't have control over all the thoughts around it, but what I do have control over is, do I do it or not?
Exactly. Muhammad Ali said, to be a champion takes will and skill. He said, but by far the most important is will. Mm-hmm. You will yourself to do it, and you do it, and you're glad you did. If what you're alluding to is that our thoughts are in essence happening to us, a lot of our beliefs we inherit from our parents and from society, and they're running. What I've noticed is the first step is developing awareness. Oh, now I know I have these thoughts. Now I know I have these negative thoughts, these positive thoughts, these desires. Oh, now I'd be in jail if my thoughts were outside because there's no spam filter on them. Once we start to develop awareness, I know in your books you talk a ton about presence, and just to share, I've been practicing yoga over 20 years. I study with fantastic teachers, and I still struggle to be present. How do we do that? How do we cultivate presence in a way that is repeatable, sustainable, enjoyable, maybe? Well, yeah, people sometimes email me and they say, Dan, how can I learn to live in the present moment? Which is they don't realize it, but it's somewhat of a humorous question because the body always lives in the present moment. It can only exist in the present moment. It's the mind that flits from what we call the past to what we call the future, neither one of it which exists. All we have is this now. But our attention drifts into memory. That's the past, memory. Someone can say, well, wait a minute, Dan, I know the past exists because here's a picture from my last birthday party. But all that's happening in reality is they're showing me a photographic image of in this present moment, which reminds them of a memory of what they call the past. And the future is just imagination. We can imagine what we're going to do that day, and there's nothing wrong with that, planning our day, but we don't want to mistake past and future memory and imagination for the reality of this moment. This is our moment of power. This is our moment of sanity. So we don't have to actually learn some new skill to live in the present moment. Just be the body, move through time, but recognize all we have is now and now and now, and to handle what's in front of us.
I love what you just said, that the picture is actually just a projection of the past, like in this present moment or something like that.
Right. Yeah. In this present moment, I'm looking at an image that reminds us of something we call the past.
Because the past, that image is here now.
Yeah. That's all we really have. That's the reality. But the rest is confusion. And, what am I going to do tomorrow? Oh, that meeting I'm going into, there's a toxic person there. Oh, and then we're grieving what hasn't happened yet. Maybe they don't even show up to the meeting. So the point is, if we just focus on what's in front of us, that's why when I give talks, I give seminars, workshops, I start with a cosmic duh. I don't know what I'm going to say. I had no idea what we were going to talk about, but I'm just right here in this moment, sharing with you, and it seems to flow okay.
There's only one other person I've seen do that, and that's my teacher, and he's actually saved in my phone as Socrates. Just so you know, because I'm pretty sure they're the same being from everything I've read and everything I know about my teacher. But he's the only one I've seen do that. Just comes in, looks around the room, and just goes, "Okay, here we go." And that it's present moment is what I'm hearing you say, right?
Sure, that's all that's real right now. And the rest, I mean, we can use our mind. We can remember things, and we can use our imagination to project into the future. It rarely unfolds exactly the way we thought, but those are human capacities. Just don't want to mistake them for reality. Take them with a little sense of humor.
So you and I can talk about this, and maybe the listeners can understand it. But how do they embody this? How do they develop the knowledge of what you're actually saying? Because those are different, right?
Yeah, well, developing the knowledge is more about undoing the knowledge of some bad habits we've learned. And by bad, I don't mean just to label it that way, but it's less resourceful, less useful because most of us spend a lot of time in the past or the future, one or the other, or both, instead of really focusing on what matters right now. There's a wise man named Shoma Morita, a Japanese psychiatrist, who said, to live wisely and well, he said, I recommend you do 3 things. First, accept your thoughts and feelings as natural to you in the moment, as you would in meditation. The second thing is to focus on your purpose or your goal. What do you want? What do you want to get done? And the third is do what needs to be done in line with your purpose, not in line with Dan Millman's philosophy or what you read in a holy book, but just in line with your goals. It's very respectful of each individual's purpose or goal, and just do what needs to be done. And those people function well. And, functioning well may not sound too spiritual, but it does free our attention for more spiritual matters. Now, when we talk about spirituality, often we're thinking of inner work, looking inward, meditation. And many people have a natural skepticism about inner work because, when I tell the story, in the gas station with Socrates way back when, and he's having me do the self-observation, even a self-massage, a Mongolian warrior massage, very, very deep, that one takes responsibility for one's own tensions and so on, and karma. And so I was doing all this inner work, and we were walking down Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, California, and I saw a poster about starving children, and one about the Vietnam War, and one about oppressed peoples. And I said, Sock, I turned to him and said, shouldn't I be more socially active? Like some of my teammates, they're protesting the war, and I'm doing all this work, all this navel gazing myself. And he turned to me and said, take a swing at me. I said, what? Did you hear what I was just saying? He said, come on, I'll give you $5 if you can slap me on the cheek. So I started bobbing and weaving, and I took a swing at him and found myself very quickly on the ground in a rather painful wrist lock. I got this scene into the movie, by the way. The director put it in 2 weeks before they started filming. Anyway, so as he helps me up to my feet, Socrates says, so you notice a little leverage can be very effective? I went, yeah, shaking out my wrist, I said, yeah, I notice it's very effective. And he said, you want to help people. You want to be active, social activist. Fine, do what your heart tells you, but don't neglect the work on yourself so you can develop the clarity to know how to exert the right leverage at the right place at the right time. And so it's not either or. It's not looking inward or being socially active. It's both and. And so the one helps the other. And anyway, that's what came up in response.
Yeah. Have you gotten the pushback, and I've gotten this when I've been coaching others of, well, Nick, that sounds really selfish. Working on myself, I should be working on my community. I should be working on the world. Have you heard that? Have you seen people struggle with that question of that inner outer action?
Well, yeah, that was the point of the story. I mean, I said, I feel kind of selfish doing all this work on myself instead of helping others, so-called others. Yeah, that's really the point of the story, that both are important. working on oneself to develop that clarity, to be more effective in the world. So it's not one then the other, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Spend some time in repose, whether it's meditating or doing other internal practices, breath work and so on. And then you can go into the world and be more of a role model for other people. And people notice that kind of thing. And you can be more effective in your world, among family, peers, colleagues, friends.
It almost sounds like becoming more of an example of how one could be. Like, hey, here's what I'm doing some work, and here's how I'm showing up, and people start to notice, and that helps them maybe awaken to other ways they could be.
Yeah, remember that When Harry Met Sally, that movie where that scene in the cafe where that woman says, "I'll have whatever she's having," you know? So when you're a good example, see, Albert Schweitzer once said, in influencing other people, example is not the main thing. It's the only thing.
Yeah, it sounds like then we're getting to more of a teacher's role is to be more of embodied, and the way you teach is through how you live. And it becomes less and less about do this technique or listen to what I say. It's more of like maybe watching a person that you admire or would like to emulate.
Yeah, Gandhi said, "My life is my teaching." You know, there's James Baldwin said, "Children have never been very good at listening to what their parents tell them, but they never fail to imitate them."
For you, I've always wondered in your stories, is Socrates is that an amalgamation of teachers? Is he one person? Is it multiple people? What's that? Can you share some insight into that character?
Sure. Because I left it ambiguous, a bit mysterious in the book and in the movie. I mean, I wasn't the screenwriter, but I'm just saying the film they adapted from the book. And for those who've read the book or seen the movie or are curious about it, in my final book, my 18th book, because I'm done with long form book writing as far as I know. I don't have a movement to do any more books, but 18 was enough. And the last book is called Peaceful Heart, Warrior Spirit, the true story of my spiritual quest. And it answers all those questions. But for now, let me just say that I make a confession in the preface to that book, because the book really is my... people thought I learned a bunch of stuff from an old gas station attendant. Now I go around teaching. But there's a lot more to that story. It was a 20-year period, an intensive 20 years, studying with 4 radically different teachers. One I called the professor. One I referred to as the guru. Joy and I were with him almost 8 years. The third was the warrior priest. And the fourth teacher, who really grounded me, brought me back to earth, I called the sage. And so people naturally might ask, well, wait, what about Socrates? Was he one of those 4? And that's when I confess that in a sense, Socrates is absolutely real. Dan Millman, however, is a fictional character. What I'm really saying is that I am the character Socrates. I'm certainly old enough now. But yeah, I've really become that character. And the dialogues were not remembered. I wrote them as I created the book. So I did meet, by the way, a radically enigmatic, mysterious, puzzling old character about 3 a.m. in a service station in Berkeley, on the corner of Oxford and Hurst Streets, which they closed down a couple of years after I graduated. But I remembered that fellow. And just as Daniel-san had Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, or Frodo had Gandalf, or Don Juan Matus was the teacher of Carlos Castaneda, King Arthur had Merlin the magician. So this repeated theme of student and wise master was the motif that I used in Way of the Peaceful Warrior to convey the wisdom. You could say Socrates was my muse. He was a means to draw upon deeper, higher wisdom than 34-year-old Dan could really convey at the time.
Yeah, I appreciate the share so much. And it's just, I'm getting this vision of, it's almost like your inner guide of someone who showed up to help you through these moments and the voids you went through, and the 20-year gap, which is so important. No one really gets to see that work,
Right.
the work you do in the shadows.
Right. In fact, many teachers, we imagine them just, they appeared whole, of whole cloth, with all this wisdom, but all teachers have a backstory. I know the backstory of a number of different well-known personalities today, and they all learned from other people what they share in their own way. And by the way, I don't parrot what I learned from these 4 different teachers. They opened doors, they unlocked, provided keys to unlock doors within me. So I was able to express things in my own way, in a fresh way, rather than just saying what this person or that person said.
I've noticed you pull from all different places, which I've always really appreciated: yoga, shamanism, Tai Chi. Is there one modality you would say is your work, or are you a jack of all trades? How would you sum up all the learnings you've put into Dan?
Good question. Well, I do have a 7th degree black belt on the trampoline. Who knew that just liking jumping up and down on a trampoline would have led to a college scholarship, a world championship, and blah, 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 and all that followed. I just did what I loved, and I continued in that path. And as far as your question goes, in terms of how do you label me, what box can I be put in? I'm more of a brand X generic teacher. I'm not. I've studied various aspects of Zen, Taoism. I've been contacted by rabbis and by Zen Buddhists and Christian mystics and others who said, this book, Peaceful Warrior, is really about our teachings. And somehow I captured the essence of different teachings. So if I'm greedy, because if I'm a member of this, I can't be a member of that. And I'm kind of a member of none, but a friend to all. And so what I express, I believe, is more like what Joseph Campbell referred to as perennial wisdom. It's just accessible to all of us. I'm an ordinary guy. I'm like everyone else, which gives people hope. I'm not on a pedestal. I don't speak from up on high and make pronouncements, as some spiritual teachers do. They have the robes and the beads and the tradition behind them, Advaita Vedanta, Zen Buddhism, and so on and so forth, yoga, but I'm just a person speaking from my heart to yours.
How have you found success in doing it your way like that? Because as I alluded to earlier, it seems to be a lot of the predominant teachers have a lineage or a shtick or the robes. How have you stayed true to your heart and created what you have?
Well, call me the Bruce Lee of spiritual teachings, in the sense that Bruce liked whatever worked. There are people who practice one martial art and they do that in depth for 20 or 30 years. And they get high ranking in terms of belts and experience. I'm more of a generalist. I've explored various martial arts, for example, to carry this analogy a little further. And that gave me perspective and understanding and appreciation for what makes one art special in this way and one art special in that way. And so I can understand the essence of movement arts, martial arts. I wrote a book which is now titled Body, Mind, Mastery. It's had 4 titles. The first was Whole Body Fitness. The second was The Warrior Athlete. The third title was The Inner Athlete. And finally, Body, Mind, Mastery, Training for Sport and Life. And I express, that's my gift to athletes or anyone who trains, whether they're musicians, opera singers. I've received letters from dog trainers who appreciated the book. That's one of my earlier books, but it was revised and improved each time. So again, as I'm sure you'll have it in your notes, but if anybody is curious about my work, they can go to peacefulwarrior.com. And there are online courses, and all my books are listed there and described. And that's a good place to visit, peacefulwarrior.com.
Yeah, I love how you change the book so many times. It's kind of suits you, right?
Yes. That particular book. I even changed Way of the Peaceful Warrior. On its 20-year anniversary, I said, this was my first book, and there are some kind of corny parts in there. It's not great writing. In fact, when I wrote The Journeys of Socrates, that's my best written work. It's truly a novel.
That one gets dark too. I appreciated that you went for it more in there, and you really opened up and brought a lot more power in on that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad somebody gave me a sideways compliment. They said, I can't believe the same guy wrote Peaceful Warrior and The Journeys of Socrates, because it was 25 years later. I was able to, my writing improved over time. So the point is, each of those books express a different facet of the Peaceful Warrior's way and an approach to living with courage and with love.
I appreciate that. And that actually helps me get over some fears around writing, because I've been holding off. And it's like, well, the first time you exercise is not going to be as good as the 100th time. Like, the same rules apply to all these different areas of our lives.
Exactly. People wouldn't build a cabinet and expect the first one to be a masterwork, but they expect, if they write a book, that it's going to come out just great somehow, because they know how to put words together in a sentence and so on. But anything improves over time. Sure. Wisdom is practice, practice, practice.
So I love how you make things so simple. I'm curious, you've now mentioned mastery. I'm curious if you can share your insights on that. I feel like it's an overused word. Everyone's a master now, master yoga teacher, master coach.
Right.
From some teachers I've heard, like, you only become a master once a master actually anoints you as one. Or what's your take on mastery? How do we use it in an applicable way to our lives also?
I think the impulse to mastery is more about perspective. As soon as somebody recognizes that their practice of cello or piano or martial arts or sports or fitness or painting, whatever their practice is, when they go, this is really a metaphor of my life. When they realize that, how it connects with their whole of their life, that's when the path of mastery begins. So someone can be a relative beginner, but they're on the path of mastery, whereas somebody else might become a great expert at what they do. But if it's disconnected from their everyday life, then maybe there's not yet a master, just an expert. That's how I would make a differentiation, rather than an honorific title. That reminds me of something. When I was coaching at Stanford as a 22-year-old, started coaching there. The coach from USC came up for a dual meet, in gymnastics, and he whispered to me, he'd heard some weird rumors about me, that I was this Zen type guy. And he said, Dan, I heard a rumor that you have your athletes meditate before competitions. And I said, oh, no, Jack, no, I wouldn't do that. I said, I have them meditate during competitions. because, you recognize, gymnastics, doing a routine is a form of meditation. Mm-hmm. It's definitely in the present moment. It's definitely focused, concentrated. You're not thinking about what you're going to eat tomorrow or what you did yesterday. So it can be a profound form of moving meditation. And that's really what to do with our lives, because we can sit down and close our eyes and sit in a nice, good posture. But eventually we have to open our eyes and get up and start moving in everyday life again. Yeah. And just like in a yoga class, when you roll up the mat, class isn't over. Yoga continues throughout the day. And so that's what I offer that reminder.
Mm. You must have got a pretty funny look from that other coach. I mean, you're 20, 30 years ahead of your time at that point. Phil Jackson's not even teaching the NBA players meditation yet.
Well, Phil actually wrote an endorsement for Body, Mind, Mastery.
Very cool.
Before he started writing his own books.
Very, very cool. It sounds like then mastery is about living or how we live, or having a connection to what we're doing, a deeper meaning.
Well, there's a story about Musashi Miyamoto, who was in this inn, this Japanese ryokan, an inn, and he had a beautiful sword at that time in his life and career. And these ruffians who didn't recognize him because he was dressed shabbily, modestly, and they were starting to make loud comments around him, hoping to goad him into a fight and kill him and steal his sword. And at that moment, maybe you've heard this story, but at that moment, when they were about to approach him, they were coming closer to him, he reached up with his chopsticks, and there were 7 flies around his head. And with his chopsticks, he went and captured all 7 with his chopsticks. And they turned and ran out the door because they recognized how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm. And now in the West, we'd go, well, he's good with chopsticks, but let's see how he is with a 6-shooter. We don't get that he was showing mastery by being calm and just catching those flies. He didn't have to fight these ruffians. They ran out the door. So the point is, that's a way of living with grace and humility, and showing, they call it wabi-sabi in Japan, showing grace and excellence in all that we do. And that's difficult. I mean, I still break a dish now and then, it slips out of my hand, or stumble, So I'm not saying I'm a perfect example of every moment, being this perfect type master. People can do that when they're on stage, they can put on that kind of master act. But most of us, we get up in the morning, put our pants on, whatever. And we go about our day doing the best we can. In fact, supposedly that those were the final words of the Buddha. His students, before he died, they said, can you give us the last words of advice? And he said, just do your best.
I love that. And it's, I'm almost getting this image of the warrior in the garden,
Yes.
He doesn't need to tell anyone or show anyone, but the presence, you can feel it. And I'm just thinking of, I get to go study with my master, and I stay at his home with him and his wife, and I watch them argue, and it's like, oh, you're enlightened and you still have arguments with your wife.
Exactly.
Okay. Like, thank God I can relax, because, that is such a challenge and mirror. So I just love the ease in which the way you're describing mastery and presence, and self growth in any avenue of life.
Ram Dass used to say, you think you're enlightened? He said, go visit your family.
That's it. That one rings true to me with Thanksgiving coming up. Every year it comes back around. It's like, there's that thing I haven't cleared up yet. Okay.
Exactly.
Thanks for showing me.
Yes. Beautiful.
That's great. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you being here, sharing your wisdom, your time, your lightheartedness. Anything you'd like to leave us with? Any last insights or any last words of wisdom before we part?
Sure. As a reminder, based on what we were talking about earlier, to progress toward your goals, choose one of the two following methods. You can find a way to quiet your mind, create empowering beliefs, raise your self-esteem, and practice positive self-talk to find your focus and affirm your power to free your emotions and visualize positive outcomes so that you can develop the confidence to generate the courage, to find the determination, to make the commitment, to feel sufficiently motivated to do whatever it is you need to do. Or, alternatively, you can just do it.
Perfect. Perfect, Dan. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time, for your wisdom. I will put in the notes, how to reach you, contact you, find your books, your website. And as always, thanks for listening to the Wellness Lab, the podcast that teaches you how to create your own wellness equation. We don't ask for anything on this podcast. We don't advertise. All we ask is that if this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who you think it'll elevate their life and the consciousness of this planet, one conversation at a time. So thank you so much. Wow, what a great conversation that was with Dan Millman, the author of the Peaceful Warrior series. I've looked forward to talking to him for so long. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just a reminder, the work that we do internally it has a reason, and we then go use it externally to make our lives better, make the lives of our families better, and ultimately make the lives of our worlds better. As always, we don't ask for anything on this show. We don't advertise. We don't sell anything. All I ask is that if you like this episode, like, subscribe, and if there's someone out there that you think would benefit from the conversation Dan and I just had, share it with them and help elevate the consciousness of the planet one episode at a time.